Thank you very much for all. Sorry for being late. It was a misunderstanding about the place, but okay, here we are. I would like to, to discuss. No, maybe I'll change the plan. Not 45 minutes just talking and then 45 minutes all of us discussing. But maybe we can put some topics on the table, discuss them, and go on. Because the topic really, I think that. It's really a quite interesting topic to discuss and to exchange views from different places and from different experiences, teaching experiences that probably we all have. Well, the case study that our colleague mentioned before was a special event that happened in Spain some years ago, it was like 9 years ago, when the government put in the core curriculum of schools a new subject that was intended to, it was called civic education, so to say, or education for citizenship, better. And it was, the purpose of the subject was to teach about civic values, constitutional values, nothing very special if we consider that the European Council had recommended that some years before, at the beginning of the century, that all countries in Europe had 1 or 2 or 3 subjects dedicated to this topic. The problem in Spain was that when it was put into the curriculum, many sectors of the society thought that this was an attack against them for some reasons that we will see later. And so there was a strong opposition and a strong discussion that even reached the Supreme Court on whether it was possible in schools to everybody to teach this subject. So that's the study case. The question, the philosophical or the ethical or the political philosophical question that I would like to ask is, as our colleague said, if this subject puts us in front of a real philosophical problem, that is, can we really teach, well, in saying it shortly, can we teach freedom? Said in other words, can we teach in schools, in democratic schools, in democracies, when we think that the freedom to choose your values is an essential feature of the school and of the society, of the political system, in a society like that, in which we have this freedom of thought, freedom of speech, and so on, as a core value, can we teach this value? Is there any contradiction out saying to people, you're free to choose your values, and at the same time saying, but you have to have one value at least in common, the value of freedom? So that was I think that was the philosophical question that was behind the polemics. And I would like to address it with the help of some philosophical developments, and at the same time trying to connect it with the study case. Now, let's go for the polemics first of all. So the polemics was at the beginning of the polemics. The main worry about people who opposed that subject was that this subject was going to teach, to inoculate in some way, to give to the students values that was not purely constitutional. So, of course, the Constitution had been taught in Spain for years, and of course the political system or the meaning of democracy had been taught. But when the subject came to the curriculum as an independent subject, as a subject with this name, is education for citizenship, some more values were put into the curriculum of the subject. And concretely, the sectors who opposed that was, okay, the party in power was the Socialist Party, so a left-wing party, and the sectors who opposed that was, on the one hand, right-wing party, the right-wing party and the Catholic Church and associations of parents who were more or less right-wing, and on the other side, extreme leftists who thought that the values that were being taught and that were going to be taught were values too congenial to capitalist, democratic, present democracies, societies, not revolutionary values or not critical, not too critical values, but quite on the opposite, values that were going to make stronger and to reaffirm the present situation. So these two sectors, quite opposite to one another, were the ones that were in opposition to it. Now, some parents decided that their children didn't have to go to the subject. That they thought that they have the right to, in conscience, to oppose that and to be able to not to attend this class. In fact, this is what happens with religion in schools. You have the religion class, but you can choose to attend it or not to attend it. It's free to the parents to decide. So what these parents, usually parents that have their kids in this religion subject, thought was that the same freedom applied to this other subject. The problem is that that was put in like democratic values like a religion, like an optional religion, like an optional, or at least like an optional ideology. And of course, the schools and the government, the Ministry of Education, didn't accept that. Didn't accept that the subject was like an option. It was something compulsory for everybody. So that was the beginning of the big battle between both sides, and the problem arrived, as I said before, arrived to the Supreme Court, which had to decide if parents have this freedom, in fact. No? We had a subject about freedoms, we had a subject about democracy and about pluralistic values, and people wanted to have their freedom, not to go to the subject to teach freedoms. So that is, even when you have to formulate it, you notice this philosophical or this meta-analytical problem that you have to reflect on if you have the freedom to choose freedom, so to say, or freedom to choose the teaching of freedoms, or the teaching of freedoms doesn't include the freedom to choose this teaching. So what the Supreme Court said that, okay, you have in the Constitution two rights. You have the right of the parents to decide the education of their children on the one side, and on the other side you have the right of the state to teach and to defend pluralistic values, to democratic values. So these were both rights were in collision here, and the Supreme Court 3 years after had to 3 or 4 years, 4 years after, in the year 2010, had to decide whether this was appropriate or not, and it decided the decision was quite curious because it decided that to the first question, the state has the right to defend pluralistic values. The state has the right to defend democracy and to teach democracy and to defend the values that organize a pluralistic society on the one side, but the Supreme Court accepted that in this subject it was prone to teach opinions or ideas that weren't so strictly pluralistic. And it was possible that some parents detect in their schools that the children were taught about concrete values, not just the value of liberty, not just the value of plurality or pluralism, but a concrete ideological, not consensual value. And if this happened, the Supreme Court accepted that just in this case, the parents had the right to protest, to put their kids out of the subject, and to protest to the courts, and to have the right to decide education of their children, defended the other right on this balance. So, what was, in my opinion, the problem here? As I said before, the philosophical problem that we had here. The question could be said in these terms. How much liberal are you when you're trying to be liberal? Or how much liberal are you when you're trying to be a liberal teacher or a liberal educator? Does your liberalism and your defense of democratic values, of plurality and so on, include the acceptation or the awareness that some of these values are not your own values as a liberal, democratic, pluralistic teacher? Or does it not? Do you have to set a playground, and in the playground a lot of different ideologies, a lot of different opinions are accepted, except those ideologies that question the very same playground? So if you have the second option, the problem is that it's more or less what every believer makes with their opinions. Let's take, for example, one of those very strict Orthodox Catholic parents who opposed this subject that I said before. So they think that in this, when you accept more or less the framework of of Catholicism, of course you have a lot of discussions inside. No? There's no one simple answer for every question. You have more left-wing Catholics and more right-wing Catholics. You have more people in Catholicism more Orthodox or more Reformist. So you have also, but you have to accept the framework of some basic ideas. So they will say, why choosing? What's the difference from a conceptual point of view? What's the difference between choosing a pluralistic, democratic, liberal framework or a Catholic framework? In both cases, you're rejecting the possibility of changing framework. You're accepting discussion, you're accepting plurality, but within a very concrete framework that is not abstract, is not neutral, is not everybody's framework, is very concrete, very charged with a lot of suppositions and a lot of concrete ideas, prejudices, could we even say. Now, when we can go back to the defense of this pluralistic, democratic framework, which kind of justifications do we have in the history of political philosophy to defend it in front of the others? Because we have this framework, and we can have a lot of them, all of them with a lot of discussions inside and with a lot of tenets that are rejected as something outside. So when we look back in the history, I found at least three different defenses of this framework. The problem was that these three different possibilities of defending this framework have contradictions between them. All of them. I mean, 1, 2, Number 3 has contradictions with 2 and 3. Number 2 has contradictions with 1 and 3. And number 3, logically, has contradictions with the other 2. So maybe in these contradictions that we find when we try to just justify a pluralistic, a democratic, a liberal framework, maybe in these contradictions lie the problem, that we can't find, there's a contradiction inside the very liberal project, the very liberal, democratic, pluralistic project. And so it's obvious that people who don't agree or not fully agree with the project detect them and denounce them. So which are these 3 justifications? So very quickly said. The first one was found in John Locke, no? in the defense that he makes of tolerance. Now, if we reflect about it, we can see that tolerance is the very subject that is in this discussion, that is behind this discussion. How much do I have to tolerate? Do I have to tolerate other views? Of course, in the case study that I said, the parents didn't tolerate the state to teach some kind of values, but they thought that the state didn't tolerate them in wanting to defend or to other values or to abstain for receiving them. So it was, we can reformulate the problem as a problem of tolerance. So what did John Locke said 300 years ago? What did he say about tolerance, about the possibility of tolerance between different views in a democratic society? He gave one justification for this tolerance, a justification that is in which, when he talks about this possibility of different values, he's talking about different religious values, but it applies to every ethical or political value that we may have. He's talking about these different values that we have in a society, and then he reflects about them and says, okay, people have all these values, everyone thinks that his or her value is the best, but we can find a common ground between all of them. That is that all of them, okay, I think that my value, let's call it value A, is better than your value, that is value B, but we can find a common ground, and the common ground is that I believe that defending my value A, is better when I choose it freely than when I don't choose it freely. And I recognize that your value B, that I don't like very much, or at all, because it's totally wrong, but I recognize that it's more valuable that you defend value B on your own devices because you want it, because you have chosen it, than choosing it, that defending it just because it was imposed to you, or you're obliged to say that you defend it, but you don't really believe about that. I can recognize a value about values. I can recognize I will call it, just to make it easier to pronounce, a meta value, no? A value about values. I can recognize that, okay, we have different values and we cannot agree about that, but we can agree that defending those values freely, because we have chosen them, has something special. Okay, the value is very bad, your value is very bad, very wrong. But anyway, at least you have chosen it freely. At least you are not playing lips, just saying that you defend it because, okay, you have, you're obliged by the government, or you think you're gonna earn more money because of that, or because you have thought to say so, but you have never really reflected about that. All these ways of defending values are a little bit less important than defending them because you really believe them, because you have chosen them, because you have freely decided that these are your values. So this meta value, of course, Locke refers to religion, and in religion it's very clear, no? You don't have a real faith in what you're saying, then you don't have faith. The faith is in itself a very internal a feature of beliefs. It's a very internal feature of the religious, purely religious plurality, but it applies to any other ethical or political value, or even aesthetical value. If you say that you like it, my novel, but I know that you say that just because you have to, or because out of courtesy, or okay, I don't value it so much. I value it more if you say, okay, I don't really like it, but some parts I like it, some other parts I didn't like. But I feel that you're being sincere. I feel that you're being expressing yourself, expressing your real faith about my my writing. So everywhere in aesthetics, in ethics, in politics, not just in religion, but also in religion, we feel this special meta value that we give to decisions of people, that they have chosen them freely. And so Locke says that that's one reason to defend tolerance. If we are not tolerant towards other people, we're obliging them, we're making them decide, or making them act, or making them speak without this meta value that we agree that is a value, and we have not to do that. No, we have to defend a society in which this meta value is common. So if we reflect, that's a very interesting way in which Locke has managed to put freedom as a value above all other values. Maybe the word above is not correct if we think that value is just one more value that he has elevated in some way, and he has chosen that just because he likes it and put it over the others. He has more noticed that this value is connected to every other value. So when he does that, he's just putting, in fact, all other values, when they are freely and sincerely defended, in a special level. Well, it's in my opinion, that's a very curious way of defending this value, without the problem of being accused of just choosing your value and trying to impose them as every other sect or every other religion or every other political ideology is trying to do. So that was position or defense number one, in order to put freedom and tolerance to other people, and therefore a pluralistic society in a special place. The second one that we can find, in the history of thought about tolerance and pluralism and freedom of expression and of thought, the second one can be found also in Locke, in the same book, in the letter concerning tolerance. And the curious thing is that it's in the same book, and as I said before, it's contradictory to the first one. Because the second argument that we can find in this letter is, well, he goes on reflecting about these issues, especially religious issues, and the tolerance between them, among them, and Locke at one point says, okay, then we see that people defend this religious option, other people really defend this other religious opinion, this other defend this religious sect and orthodoxy. And then we find that nobody really gets to convince the others on rational grounds, with reasoning and with arguments and counter-arguments. We see that nobody reaches this possibility of convincing others just on rational grounds. So, if we want to be rational, we have to accept that these problems, these discussions, aren't really rational. No, it's the other option, that it's rational and everybody's, except one sect or except one religion, is rational, and all the others are just crazy or too silly to understand arguments, is a quite implausible option. So the reasonable option is to decide that these problems are not really rational problems. And then, from a rational point of view, if we observe them, we have to conclude that the most rational option in front of a non-rational discussion is to leave people to let people decide, to let people have their different opinions, to let people have their different religions, without interfering, because we don't have a rational foundation to convince them or to oblige them or to justify us in order to oblige them to do something or to do the other. If we look at it, we can see that this is a more skeptical argument. It's a typical skeptical argument in the history of epistemology, but we are applying now it to politics or to tolerance or to religions. We are saying, okay, we don't have a way of deciding. We don't have our rationality is not strong enough to decide here. Skeptical argument. So let's leave people decide, or let's leave ourselves decide on other grounds, not rational grounds, but whatever, without interfering or without thinking that we are justified to interfere from a rational point of view. Now, if we have to tolerate other people because we don't have a deep ground to decide, a rational foundation to decide, that, in fact, is the opposite of what we said before. We said that we have to let people choose between values because we had one common value, the value of freedom, the value of this meta value, as we said, that choosing something freely is better than choosing it just because you're obliged to do so. In the first case, we had something that, reflecting about problems of freedom, we have found something that is above everything else. On the second point, on the second way of thinking, we have found that we don't have a special ground or a special position to decide. In the first point, we have found the fundamentals of politics, this meta value. On the second ground, we find that politics doesn't have a fundament, and so we leave people decide. So the skeptical argument, the second argument, and the meta value argument oppose each other. Maybe this sounds quite abstract, or even it sounds quite, in some way, not so evident. In fact, it wasn't evident for Locke, that was writing the same letter, and at one point he defends the first one, and at the other point he defends the second one. He didn't realize that he was defending two opposite conceptions in the same letter. But when we go to practical matters, this difference is not just a tiny difference or a scholar difference, but very real and difference in current political discussions. Not just in the discussion I mentioned before, but if we think about it, many discussions also related to education, for example, have to do about it. What do we do with people who want to wear special garments that reflect their religion, like, for example, the Muslim veil for women or for female kids? What do we do when they choose to wear that, or when their parents choose to wear that? Do we have to allow it, or we don't have to allow it in a public school or in a public institution? So if we adopt the first position, the first Lockean position, the position of freedom as a meta value, we could say that we don't. Well, there's a lot of feminist thinking that says that when women has this garment as something compulsory, or where the kids, especially female kids, have this garment, they haven't had the real option of choosing it. So if we let them wear that, we are not letting them choosing, we are not letting them exercising their true freedom. We are not recognizing this meta value of freedom. And so we are we have as a justification, as they do in France, for example, we have the justification to say to these kids, no, you're not allowed to wear that, in order to make you more free. But this is a prohibition, something that you're forbidden to do, in order to be, because we want you to be really free, because we want you to be till you're 16 or till you leave school. We want you to learn about freedom in a free environment, the school, the public school, and we want you to learn that without interference from your tradition or your culture or your religion. And when you really learn how to be free, then later, when you're 16 or when you go out from the public school, you will be in the position of deciding, okay, I want to wear the veil, or no, I don't want to wear the hijab. And this decision will be all right, because you have this meta value, but still you're a kid, you don't have it, and so you have to wait. So that's position number one, that could be based on Locke, on the first argument of Locke, as I said. But position number two, and in fact this position number one is what France, more or less, the Republic of France defends in their legal system. Position number two, that is more the position of multiculturalist countries like Canada, Belgium, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, the United States even, would say, no, we are not allowed to decide to see or to detect if you're being free or not. We're not allowed to detect if your parents are right or wrong, if they are defending your freedom or just exercising your freedom or not, or cutting it. So we are not able to decide, so we leave everybody to decide. You want to wear the veil, it's all right. You don't want to, it's all right too. But deciding in your name, deciding what would make you more free would be something without rational foundations to do. So we're not going to do that, and we leave you, and so some kids, Muslim kids, wear the veil, and some others don't. And this is tolerance. In the first French option, the tolerance was, waiting for your meta decision, to your meta value to be developed. In this second option, the tolerant option is not to interfere at all and let you wear wherever you wear. So that's an example. We could detect many others. This one is the interesting thing, in my opinion, about this one was that it was in education to see this conflict between these two possibilities. But then we have a third option to defend pluralism and tolerance and freedom among people. That is, in some cases, can be in opposition with these two. So I'm going to put it on the table, and then we will, if you want, you will shortly discuss about it, and then we will go on. This third option was not in Locke, but it's present in another typical or historical liberal figure as John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill has also the second argument that we have mentioned. The argument about skepticism is also an argument that we can find in Mill. So we said that curiously Locke had two contradictory arguments in him, and now we're going to Stuart Mill, and he also does. He also has two: the second one that I mentioned before, and the third one that I'm going to briefly explain now. So it looks like these arguments are not only contradictory, but also has the ability to be linked to the other without the author that defends them noticing it. It's maybe something curious that could be also reflected, because it could say us something about this problem, but I will leave it now. Just let's go to the argument. Now we are on freedom, on the book on liberty by John Stuart Mill, and in this book we find this skeptical argument. We don't know which opinion is the best opinion, so we have to leave people have different options and discuss about them and express them. No, the book is especially about freedom of speech, so we have to let them discuss, because even if our opinion is right, our opinion will be better and our opinion will be fortified and in the conflict with other options. And so it's good for us, even if we have a very clear opinion about what matter. It's good for us to let this freedom of speech flourish and all of that. And then, after all that, Stuart Mill introduces another argument, and the argument is okay, because when we have a society in which many different opinions, in which many different ethical and political and religious values are flourishing, we can get, and here comes the utilitarian Stuart Mill. Stuart Mill was a defender of freedom of speech, but was also a utilitarian. And he comes his second argument. He said, because when we have a society of these, with these features of plurality and the possibility of defending many different options, we have a happier society. We have society in which nobody can decide better than an individual which opinion or which conception fits more this individual's happiness, this individual's preferences, this individual's life. So it's a very difficult matter. There's a small skeptical argument here still, but in the development of the argument, we arrive to something that is not so skeptical. So the beginning is more or less skeptical. The beginning is, okay, it's difficult for me to decide what makes me happier, but it's even more difficult for me to decide what makes you and you and you and you and you happier. No? It would be a tough task for me. So let's decide that I'm just going to decide about myself, and let's decide that who can better decide about you and you and you than each of you. And when a society allows all of us to decide individually about our opinions, this society is allowing all of us to decide our happiness. And now we're not so skeptical. The beginning was skeptical, but the end of the argument is not so skeptical. And this society will be happier. So we have found like the trick for making our society happier. A quite valuable trick. It's not a strict skeptical would say, I don't know what to do in a society to make it happier or less happier. Maybe we have to stop deciding, but I don't know if this is going to end well or bad. But Stuart Mill is not in that position. Stuart Mill is convinced that when people have the option of deciding about their values and about their religion and all of that, these people is going to be happier. So we'll maximize the happiness of the society, and the utilitarian principle of maximizing the happiness of a society will be accomplished. This is quite interesting for him and for his development, because these two wings of his thought, utilitarianism and liberalism, are joined together, and it's very useful for him. But for us, let's just look at this curious thing that we now have a third argument for freedom. The first argument was it's a meta value that makes all the other values more acceptable, and so everybody who defends any value, whatever, would accept that liberty is also a value. The second was, we don't know which value is better, so let's leave people to their own devices, and when we do that, that's freedom, curiously. That's tolerance, that's plurality. And the third one is plurality is good because plurality maximizes the happiness of a society. So we have a certainty that we didn't have in the second option. We have a certainty, this is going to be people happier. And we also have a defense of happiness that is not congenial to the defense of freedom that we put in the first argument. In many options, we could, for example, in the discussion that I shortly developed before, the discussion about the Muslim veil in female kids, if we want to make them happier, or to make all the families happier, or to make all the society happier, maybe we couldn't choose the same as we had chosen on the grounds of this meta value of liberty. It's clear that in many situations, the best option for not discouraging people about their faith in the democratic system, or the best option to just to make them happier and to let them, is to leave these kids wearing the the veil. So this is in societies. Well, I mentioned before the French society, in which the option is not to allow them. Then I mentioned some societies in which the option is to allow them, and it's protected as a religious right. I would like to mention here a third option that is, curiously, it's Spain too. In Spain we don't have a law deciding about this issue. So there's no, in public schools, can you wear a Muslim veil in a public school? You don't have a law that says yes you can, or no you can't. What we have is the school, each concrete school has their own norms, the norms of the school, and in some of them, of these norms, this is said, nobody can wear anything, no kid can wear anything on the head, and therefore they are not allowed to wear the Muslim veil. In some others says no kid is allowed to wear anything on the head except on religious grounds, and then the veil is accepted. In other, nothing is said about heads and about garments in the head, and so you're allowed. So each school has a different rule about that. And some, of course, this is not argued usually, but if philosophically we look for a justification of this situation, we could find this Millian or Stuart Mill's argument behind it. It would say, okay, why would we have to decide from the state or from the government far away from every school a decision for every school? No, we can't know. We really can't know what's the best option. Let's leave every school. Let's leave everybody, every individual in the position of Stuart Mill, decide what's the best option, the option that they see that it's going to make happier, it's going to make easier the living in this school. Even every individual, in fact, when we decide that, we are leaving the option not only to every school, but also to every individual, because one individual is in a school, for example, in which he or she discovers that it's forbidden to wear the veil for his or her kid, but he or she has another school just 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers far away in which this is allowed. So we are also leaving the individual to decide which option fits his or her happiness better. Do I prefer to walk 1 kilometer more every day, and then have my kid with a veil, or walking less and not having it? So it's an option. It's yours to decide which makes you happier, and so on, so on, and so on. So this utilitarian principle could be understood to be behind this decision. Well, I have some other examples, but maybe, as I said before, I would like to start the discussion, and then we. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we can conclude in some way. Okay. Yeah.